All right, so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about server-side Python. And I know you can't see it. I'm going to turn this screen on in a minute. As opposed to what we've been doing the whole time previously is client-side Python. And so, guys, I'm sorry for those of y'all watching the video. I'm going to be drawing on the board, but hopefully my voice will, maybe I'll take a picture of what's on the board and upload it as a note that you can see. But it should make sense as you just hear my voice. So we've seen the way that the web browser, we've seen the way that the pen doesn't work. We've seen the way that the web browser works, right? We have, an app. And what does he do? He makes a request to get a file. Now our files have been stored on our local machine, right? We just stick them in a directory so that we can load them up, right? And so the application goes and opens that file, reads it in as a text document, does some churning to create a so-called document object model that it can display on the screen. So that is all kind of local, client side, but this file doesn't have to be located on the same machine. In fact, it almost never is. How many times do you use a web browser to view something on your own machine? Almost never. Instead, it goes over the internet and asks somebody else to give you that file, right? And so over the internet, there's some software over here called server software, and it's managing all the files and whatever. And so the app asks for the file across the internet, and the server says, okay, and he opens the file and he sends it back down the pipe as a text document. And then if the app needs additional things like images or sound files or whatever, the server coughs those up as well and sends them down the pipe. But usually the server is not just opening a file, right? Yeah, maybe back in 1992 or 1993 or whatever, that's what it was doing. Nowadays, there's a database involved, and the server is running software that reads that database and constructs in memory, not on the disk itself, a bunch of text, a bunch of HTML to send back to the app. And so that server side, it's the one that's making, all the HTML, right? It's creating, in memory a giant string with the HTML tags, the body tags, everything else, and then it's sending that back, down to whatever socket that the app needed in order to get the information. So that's what we're going to be doing on this side, because the server-side software can be written in any programming language. Now, some programming languages are better suited for it than others. Python would be a really bad server-side software just because it's really not very fast. It's very slow, relatively speaking. And there's really no big framework for handling, It doesn't plug into a larger server framework. Whereas Java, there are, the Apache web server or whatever has a whole bunch of extensions that you can plug into Java into it, and C#, the .NET framework has a whole bunch of extensions so that a whole bunch of different programming languages, can serve as the client, as the server-side software. So that's what we're going to do, is a little bit of client-side. No, server-side. We've done client-side. What we've been doing every day since the first lecture. Do y'all have any classes where you configure web servers? Let's do that. Really doesn't need to go that far. So there's a zip file and a Word doc in the Lecture Y submission folder. All right, let's look at the Word doc first. Let's turn the projector on. I mean, I know you're looking at it on your own screen, but I like for the projector to be working as well. By the way, the whole point of JavaScript, well, one of the points of JavaScript is to prevent or to enable the application, the browser to update its own page without having to ask the server for additional information. Because each time you make a request over the internet, it can go wrong, right? We've all seen the spinning wheels and the drop connections and everything. All right, so download the web app 1 zip file from the week 9 folder. Well, this isn't week 9, this is actually 16 anyways, that's all not correct. So from the Lecture Y folder, launch idle and use file open to locate the simple underscore HTTPD. It stands for HTTP daemon, or some people pronounce it daemon because it's spelled D-A-E-M-O-N. The daemon is the program that runs in the background. Typically, it's a program that has no visual output at all. If you're running a Linux machine, a Unix machine, or whatever, you know, the daemon programs are the ones that you don't have any visual output. They just run in the background, right? You can have a mail server running in the background and an FTP server and stuff like that. In Windows, they're called services, and I'm not sure if people still use the term daemon and the other ones or not. No, anyways, let's open our zip and expand it and then go find that file. And what is this one? Well, this is our web server. This script is our web server. It's not a very good web server, but it's enough to prove the point. Let's go get it. Can we minimize these so that we don't have all that text? Ah, forget it. All right. Don't have any PowerPoints. Maybe we'll be good to go now. All right. Ooh, lots of stuff from the last lecture. How about that? Download that. Unzip it. Extract it by whatever means necessary. Go and find the folder that got created when you did that. Can I not just extract it like that? I hate it when they install zip handlers when Windows has it perfectly good. Oh, it's right there. All right, I should be able to see it. All right. There it is, Web App 1. All right. We see that there are several files here. There's the index file. Whenever you access something like this, if I say go to www.rose.edu, it's defaulting for asking the web server for index.html, even though we don't see that, right? If there is no file specified, that's what the web server goes and opens. Or so I say. Index.html. Well, see what I know. All right. Anyways, that is the file that's going to be opened when our browser makes a request to our Python web server. Is index.html. If I double click on it, we'll see what it looks like. Welcome to the most awesome Beatles website ever. For now, all that you'll find here is a voting poll. Enjoy. So if I click on voting poll, well, that's certainly not what I wanted to see, right? Instead, this is Python. The web server will actually run this program when we click on this link. So we better get that web server running. So I'm going to find simple HTTPD underscore PY. I'm going to right click on it and do edit with idle. Or however you want to open it, it's fine. This is the web server software. Now, it's not doing anything super duper magical. It's just using a built-in class that Python's already got. You know what? I was able to stop the screen vibrating in another class by wiggling the cables around. Oh, memento. So anyways, what does it do? It imports from this import file, this library, two classes, HTTP server and CGI HTTP request handler. And it specifies the port that it's going to be listening on. Now, if you know much about the internet, or net configuration or whatever, you know that there's a whole bunch of different ports. Each machine has each thing that is making itself available to the web will open ports that it listens into. Now, honestly, I've forgotten most of this stuff, but I know that there's a way to get this machine to list all the open ports. Is it netstat? Yeah, there we go, right? So my machine has these ports open, 445, 1469, and whatever. It does not have port 8080 open because it's not running web server software on that port. Now, different ports are used by standards. There is a standard HTTP port. I've kind of forgotten what that was, right? HTTP port. Looks like it's 80, right? And he's not waiting on 80 because he's not a web server. When you want to open a file, you specify, if you want to open it from another port rather than the default, then you specify it. You say, go ahead, but I want you to access this on port 8080. Now, is he listening to port 8080? No, so that's not going to work. But our machine's going to be listening on 8080, and the way we're going to access it is there's what's known as the loopback address. Your machine is always sitting there listening at 127.0.0.1, I believe, but it's got an alias to make it easy to type, which is localhost. And then we're going to be listening to port 8080. So when we do that, it's going to do that. But we don't have that software running yet. I loaded it up in idle, but I didn't actually have it go. So, file save, run this guy, and now he is listening on port 8080. So I can go to Chrome and type localhost :8080, and it talks to Python. Python opens up that index.html file and feeds it back to the browser. And if we configure this appropriately so that we actually had a web server, and we could talk to each other's machines and stuff like that, it could be that you could access my machine and vice versa by IP address or something like that. But we're not going to try to do that. That would hammer in the point even more that this is server-side programming. So welcome to the most awesome Beatles website ever. This is a voting poll. Lo and behold, it actually created the voting poll. If we go back here and look at the HTML, it's really simple HTML. View page source, right? Here's a reference to the voting poll, ahref. We've seen ahref. It's a way to link to something. In this case, it's linking to a file called voting.py inside the CGI bin directory. Let's go find that file. It should be in a subdirectory of our web app directory, right? CGI bin. Or if you like opening everything from within idle, file, open, go to wherever you expanded it, web app, CGI bin, voting.py. And it looks like there's some stuff I need to delete here. I had another example going on. So we don't need athlete list and athlete model. We could delete all that. We do want voting.py. And there's the script for voting.py. How does it work? There's a library called YAT, which stands for yet another template. Yet another is kind of a joke or a common thing in web programming dating back to the 70s or whatever. You have yet another this and yet another that, because you'd write a word processor and then you'd write another one and then you'd write yet another one. Anyways, and so it's a library of things that generates HTML. Start response, include header, start from. It could be that we could just run this all by its lonesome and see what it does. No? Alright, that's fine. But you can see what it's doing. This method call is doing something that returns a string that is printed. Well, where is it printed? Is it going to show up on the screen? No, it's sent back to the client, to the browser. And so all of this is stuff that's being printed that's eventually going to show up as an HTML file for the browser to open. So that's how it works. I mean, let's customize it. Like above here, instead of yate.start_form, I mean, along with that, let's just print something. Print, I am elite hackers. Right. But is that HTML? Not really. Let's make it look like good HTML. Angle P greater than, I am elite hackers, angle /P greater than, end quote, in parentheses. And now I'm going to save the document. Make sure you save it, because unlike when we click run here, we're not going to be running it from here. The web server is going to be running it. If it wasn't saved, if it has that asterisk there, it won't pick up the newest version of it. I don't need to restart the web server software. But if it ever crashes, I am going to have to restart it. So you can just toggle over to the window, wherever it is. Oh, come on. Oh, right there? Nope, that's netstat. Right there? Okay. It hasn't crashed yet. It's showing a whole bunch of red text, but it hasn't crashed. We'll know if it's crashed because we'll try to get our browser to make a request to 8080 and it'll fail. All right. Go for it. Let's do that again. Localhost 8080. Scroll down here. Voting poll. And, right, that print message got bundled up in the HTML that was sent to, to the browser. So you could generate an entire web page just with print statements. We could go and take one of the web pages that we made in one of the prior lectures and just issue print in front of every line, right? And then this thing would cough up, it would serve our web page as something that was generated by server-side programming rather than saved as a file. Right? This data is not saved as a file. It's all generated by a program. All right, so let's click on. If you're not a maniac for Beatles history, you may wonder where Ringo is going. There's no Ringo. There's supposed to be a John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Well, their original drummer was named Pete. And wouldn't it really stink to be Pete Best, to get fired from the Beatles right before they made $1 zillion? All right, so anyways, I'm going to select Pete. He's my favorite. And then it says, Beatle Pete. Right on, man. Love is all you need. Okay, that sounds really interesting. How about John? Right on, man. Love is all you need. Okay, this is boring. It's always the same message. Let's look at the HTML here and see what that select button is supposed to be doing. When they click on submit, it issues a submit command. There is a index link at the bottom which would take us back to the root. And the action of the form, when selected is chosen, is to load up vote_selected.py. That's another Python. That's another script that gets called. So when they click on that button, it calls that script. That's another thing for us to go open in Python. See, it's telling us everything it's doing. And it all looks like errors because they made it red, and I'm not quite why they did that. To me, only if it crashes should it print out red, but whatever. So when we access it, it tells us what it's doing. It executes vote_selected.py, and then it exits that script. Right. Okay, file open. I want to get that vote_selected.py. I want to see what it's doing. That's in CGI bin, vote_selected.py. Same business, except it's storing the data before it prints it out. It wouldn't have to do that. Don't make this change. But to make it look more like the other code, we could have made it do that, right? Like I said, don't make that change. You don't need to do that. Unless you just flat out like the way it looks better. All right? So anyways. But down here it gets a little bit more complicated. Form data equals CGI field storage. Name equals form data. What is it doing? It's building the form. What is the form? This is the form that it's building, just doing it in a little bit different syntax. And then it builds a header, which is Beatle plus the name of the guy they selected. This form that it's building is based on the value that they chose. The value that they chose is passed as part of the data from the next request. When we click the the go button, which one they select is passed in. Well, where did this which Beatle come from? We'd have to go and look at the HTML for the voting form. See here? Name equals which Beatle. And when they select that one, that variable which Beatle is going to be set to George or Pete or John or Paul. So that's what that code is doing, is it's getting that data out of the form that was submitted. And so, then what does it start doing? The same kind of thing the other one did, right? Print, what Beatle it was, print right on man, love is all you need, and then it includes the link at the bottom to go back to the index or, voting again. Includes a footer. And we would not have to use this CIT library. We could just issue print statements. But it makes it easier, right? We're not having to create the home tag and the body tag and all those tags. Instead, the template library handles all that. It turns just a single print statement, a single parameter into all the nested tags necessary. So if we went and we looked at the HTML, we'd see, right, paragraphs, so we'd see an angle P, All right, so what does our instructions want us to do? That making sense? Everybody can view this thing. Everybody's getting the vote. Have you unzipped it?
Can't unzip it.
That would be a problem. Has nobody gotten to work and I've been blathering for 15 minutes? All right, let me go look. All right, so the most common problem I saw while helping with people is make absolutely sure that you actually have extracted your zip folder. And once you have extracted your zip folder, you should see simple file along with the index, along with a cute little icon, and then there should be that directory and that directory underneath it. Not inside the zip file, but inside the folder that gets made when you extract it. And that's the one that you want to edit. You don't want to just double click it and run it. It might launch idle, but it might just launch Python itself, which I really don't want. Might be good enough. I'd rather open it in idle. So find some way of opening it in idle, whether you have to launch idle and do file open or whatever. You know what, I wonder if that broke the other instance of it that I had running now that I've done that. I'm going to kill the app, the server, and just run it again for good luck. If I can find it. There we go. All right, now it's all fresh and waiting for me. Going to the Word doc. We need to change it to say Ringo rather than Pete because poor Pete got fired. That was a big scandal in 1962 because all the Liverpool fans liked Pete. He was incredibly handsome, but he wasn't that good of a drummer. So let's go edit the voter PY file to say Ringo instead. So find voting.py. Maybe you already have it open, right? Open, go into the CGI directory, voting.py. For each name and band. Okay, there we go. John, Paul, George, and Ringo. That's what we want. Now, one thing I noticed is that the form was not in the same order. And I don't know why that is. I do know why it is. Because that's a curly brace, which means it's not a list, it's a dictionary. Which makes me wonder if they would be in order if it was a dictionary. I'm going to try that out, but first, let's just see if my Ringo change worked. Okay, so localhost 8080. There we go. Let's go vote. There we go. See, Ringo, John, George, Paul. Now, is that because it's a dictionary rather than a list? Let's go look. I'm going to modify that and see if putting square braces around it fixes it. I have too many files open. Could be that it won't even work like this. Save that. Don't run it, but save it. Go back to the browser, refresh. Try it again. Did it go kablooey or did it work? Yay! It's John Paul George Rico. Okay, so if you want those to be listed in that classic order, and it was originally John's band, so it's kind of fair to list them in that order. That's actually the order in which they joined the band. That's very true. Alrighty. You always wondered, poor Ringo, did he feel left out because he was last? So, if I go back here, this is how I did that. You saw me do it. I changed Pete to Ringo, and I put square braces around it just to make it a list rather than a dictionary. And the reason why is a dictionary is unsorted, and so it was just free to make, pop them out in any order that it felt. Alrighty. But we noticed that the hackers changed our data, so I'm going to delete that line. I don't want to have the hackers line anymore. Alrighty, what else do we need to do? And after every change, hit Control-S or File Save, right? Because otherwise, the daemon's not going to pick up the newest version of the file. Alright, now we're going to open up voteselected.py, and we're going to make some changes to it, as shown here. Now golly, I didn't make it copy and pasteable, so this might be a real drag. But it looks like the only real change is this stuff. If name equals John, then do that. If name equals George, then do that. Maybe we'll just add one or two of them, right? Maybe we don't have to go nuts and give every one of them a customized message. We'll see. Alrighty. So I'm going to go to Vote Selected, and we're not going to do this. We're not going to say right on, man, love is all you need. I think I'm going to just comment that out. Instead, can I get both of these on the screen at the same time? Bash that there. Bash that there. Alright, so if the name that we got out of the form is equal to John, if name equals quote John, and it has to match exactly what was on the form on the other page, quote John in quote colon, then our message is going to be Yate, that's not Yada, sounds like a character from Star Wars, Yada, Yate, who's watching The Mandalorian? I love Baby Yoda. Alrighty. Yada.paragraph, quote, and one of his most famous songs was Strawberry Fields Forever. So, Strawberry Fields Forever, exclamation mark, end quote, in parentheses. If they hadn't had that show, I would not have even tried the service. They knew what they were doing. Elif, name equals quote George. I'm not sure why I didn't do it in the usual order. John Paul George Ringo. So if it's equal to George, colon. Now this is really mean. I make it say no one really liked George anyways. Well, that's not true. Yeah, he's my wife's favorite Beatles, so why am I making it say that? Let's make it say something else other than that. That's just you too mean. How about while our guitars gently weep? If you've never seen Prince do the solo for that song, you ought to find it. Look up While My Guitar Gently Weeps on YouTube, followed by Prince, and it's amazing. All right. Else, let's just make a generic message. Not implemented yet. Right. Kind of lame. Or it could have said that original message, like right on, man, love is all you need. Or right on, man, name is our favorite. Let's do that. That's a little bit cooler. Right. Right on, comma, man, space, end quote, plus the name variable, plus a beginning quote is our favorite too, end quote. And then we're going to print that. Print parentheses A in parentheses. And I didn't mean to run the shell. That was a mistake. I guess I better kill everything and launch my web server again. Going back to the simple file, run it again. If you try to run it twice, it'll probably complain because you can't have two applications listening on the same port. So if I run it twice, oh, I guess not, because it restarted it. If I found a way of running it twice, like going out here and running it, from Windows instead, one of them should, the second one should crash. It should not allow it to open. All right. Make sure I've saved everything and vote selected. I don't have an asterisk up there, so it's saved. I'm going to go back to my browser, run localhost 8080 again. Localhost :8080. I kept not saying that, so people kept not typing the colon in. Voting poll. John. Strawberry Fields forever. So we did it. We've made a change. We did not change a single line. We did not change a single HTML file. There's only one HTML file in the whole shebang. I'll be right over. There's only one HTML file, and that's the initial index, right? That's this thing. And if we view the source for that, we can see that what it's doing is, instead of referring to other HTML files stored locally, instead it's loading, pointing to PY files. And the Python HTML simple server is smart enough that when it opens that file, it instead runs it and prints that information to send back down to the client.
Can you go back to the code for a moment?
Yeah, sure. There's vote selected. That's from the top of the page all the way down to the print statement. And I commented out these two lines. I could just delete them entirely. All right. Let's pause there. Now we just noticed an error in the script. What's that? Sorry, I'll bring it back, guys. If you go to the poll and you don't select any of them, kaboom. A problem occurred in a Python script. Here they are in the error in which they occurred. It failed on this line. I'm not totally sure how to fix that. You got me. I'd have to research how to do that. Oh, I guess we could check to see if which Beatle was in the form data. We can add an if statement. Let's give it a shot, and if it doesn't work, we're not going to spend a lot of... By the way, once you see this message, your server has crashed completely. You may as well go and kill this guy and rerun the server. Oh, well, what do you know? Okay, it crashed. So let's go back and run that again. All right, so here's the line of code that was crashing. It's in vote selected. Let me find vote selected. Right here, when we were trying to figure out which Beatle. Apparently, that key is not even in there. So, if which underscore Beatle, end quote, I don't know why I use single quotes where I use double quotes anywhere else, but it's because this example is there, is in, so if which Beatle in form underscore data, colon, and then tab this one over, then back tab so we can add an else, colon, name equals nobody. I wonder if that'll do it. If it doesn't, I'm just going to undo those changes and you know, roll with it. Localhost 8080. Go to the voting poll. Don't select anybody. Woohoo! We fixed it. Katie, you're awesome because I've taught from this particular lecture for about for about 5 years. You're the first one who showed that. That's cool. All right. That's actually about the end of the lecture. Let's go and look to see if there was anything else we wanted to cover as far as the Word doc was concerned. Nope. And we can gussy it up. Like, let's add a horizontal rule. What's a horizontal rule? It's one of these lines. Let's add a horizontal rule above the home and vote again lines. So down here, above Yate include footer, let's just print parentheses, quote, not that line, quote, angle, HR, end quote, nope, close the angle first, then the end quote, and then the end parentheses. That'll put a line above this stuff. Might make it look prettier, might make it look uglier. We'll find out. Vote again, select. All right, it put a line above it. Put a line above this, right? Just because we added a print statement. Every print statement we add is adding to the HTML of the screen. If we view the page source, we'll see our HR right there. All right. I think we're done, and what I'd like to do is to dedicate like the last 20 minutes or so. If anybody has questions about their project and wants to show me code, we could do that. Otherwise, we can skedaddle.
Can you scroll up?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You know what, though? You see these import statements, you know these import statements. I'm going to scroll past them, okay? Because if I do that, I can get the rest of the page on the screen.
And you said we needed to save this in order to...
Every change you make, if it has an asterisk up there, it's unsaved data. So you got to save it before it'll work.
So it just basically run my...
Don't run it. Save it. File save. I mean, if you run it, it'll do something and it won't cause the world to end, but you just got to save it. So I always just hit Control S after every change, or choose File Save.